and while reducing the risk of exposure for the patients. Am I okay to share something, or is it uh, Ashwini?
Yes, yes, Harsha. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
sorry.
fine. And so throwing the same question to Mr. Dhruv, I would like to explain your solution, sir.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for inviting me here. Just a little bit of background. I am a doctor myself, and I am an ICU specialist doctor. I did my early medical education here in India, following which I moved to the United States, where I did my specialization, and then I did my super specialization in pulmonary, which is lung medicine, and ICU or critical care. So I'm a ICU super specialist doctor. Me and a colleague of mine, who we were colleagues in the United States, we moved back to India to start Cloud Physician Healthcare in 2017. The problem statement that we were solving when Dilip, who's my co-founder and also an ICU specialist doctor, that we were solving for was the shortage of ICU specialist doctors in India. Just to give you a sense of how big this problem is, India is estimated to have anywhere between 2 to 3 lakh ICU beds, and we have less than 5,000 ICU specialist doctors in the country today. These doctors are predominantly concentrated in the metro cities, in the large corporate hospitals, the Apollos, the Manipal, Max, Medanta. And the moment you go outside of these hospitals, there's a sharp drop off in the availability of expertise. And so this was the problem that we were already solving at Cloud Physician Healthcare. And the way that we decided to solve this problem was that we figured that technology is the only way to solve this problem. There's no way that our healthcare education system is going to be able to churn out and train as many ICU specialist doctors as our country needs. And the only way to solve this problem is to leverage technology. So that was the basis of what we were doing, and this prior to the onset of COVID. Now, since time COVID has been upon us, this already existing problem, this already existing fault line in our healthcare delivery system has been exacerbated several fold. So we were already short of ICU specialist doctors. We were, and now with COVID upon us, we're all reading about how we're, short of doctors, short of ICU beds, short of ventilators, etc. So our sort of solution has come to the fore, and we've been working with some of the state governments to help combat COVID and to be able to provide this expertise using technology. Now, I'll just spend a minute on exactly how we do this. We have a command center based approach where we have a command center and we're based in Bangalore, where we have a team of ICU specialist doctors who are available 24/7 working out of this command center. And we install our technology platform Radar and some hardware in hospital ICUs that need access to these doctors, by which our command center based specialists are able to are able to access all of the patient data in real time, are able to see them with high definition video, are able to interact with the nurses and the junior doctors available at these ICUs, and oversee the management of patients in these ICUs. And so we have been doing this now for the last 3 years. We've taken care of over 10,000 ICU patients so far. And in the past 2 months, we have now been working very closely with the government of Karnataka and Maharashtra and rolled out our solution in several districts in these two states, including in Mumbai, where we had one of the largest deployments. Mumbai was one of the hardest hit cities where they had a huge shortage of ICU specialist doctors, and connected all of these hospitals to our command center, where our team is actually overseeing the management of patients across the country right now. We're present in 8 states today.
I have a quick question. Hello?
Yeah, Pratik.
Yeah, hi.
Yes, Pratish.
Yeah, hi. Hi. The question is to both Harsha and Dhruv. So congratulations on recently getting funded under the Coverage program once again. And the question is, how did you guys manage? Did you guys pivot, or did you guys not pivot before and after the COVID pandemic, which happened? So was the solution the same, or did you have to reiterate your solutions to fit it with the market?
So yeah, for us as Care Nation, right? Well, as speaking last time as well. So there was always this greater vision of connecting the doctors to the patients, and whoever is in need of care needs to be able to access care. Is what our mission was and why we started Care Nation in the first place. So what we saw was, I mean, we were again very focused on really specialty care or specialties like cardiology or neurologist consultations or even telepsychiatry consultations. But at the same time, we were not too keen on cough and cold, for example, right? And then we were not trying to kind of compete with the likes of Librate or MFind who are doing this phone-based telemedicine. But at the same time, what we did realize was when there is this problem of people even not being able to go to the clinics, right, due to this COVID scare or for self-isolation. So we kind of always had this other story that we were doing around employee healthcare as well as this chronic care management through the apps. So what we did was we extended that. We kind of, I wouldn't say pivot, but then we did adapt the solution to be far more, B2C friendly sort of, where people could actually install this app on the phone and then get connected to the doctors directly. Or for the hospitals rolling out telemedicine, it was far more easier. So we've made it such that the Care Nation solution can enable a hospital who's not into teleconsultation get into teleconsultation just in a day. I mean, you can just put it up on your regular website. You can have your phone lines coming in, and you can book that appointment. You can send that links to the patients without you having an app story, without you having to work out an entire story around it. All of the solutions around scheduling, management, integration into your core EMR, all of that for the hospital is really easy. And then we could kind of convert hospitals into telemedicine enabled hospitals just in a couple of days. So that's something that we changed drastically. Also on the other side, within the hospital, how can we improve, right? I was speaking about isolating the doctors from the patients, right? I mean, how do you kind of reduce the risk of exposure for the doctors? This is similar to what Dhruv and folks at Cloud Physician do, right? Where they're trying to monitor these patients remotely. And what they're trying to solve is the part where the access to intensivists is a challenge. But then if you look at it, right, it is not really for all hospitals. For example, let's say you're going to a really big super specialty, right? Let's say Narayana or let's say Ramaya or the large hospitals. They do have their intensivists, but then their intensivists can't really go inside the ICU and then treat their COVID patients and without wearing a PPE suit. And then even after wearing PPEs, they are getting exposed and then they are falling sick to COVID. And that is something that we wanted to avoid. And what we do is really play the technology role where you can get a doctor connected to his patients virtually, but at the same time, all the interactions, all the transactions that would happen over a virtual consultation is as close to possible as an in-person consultation. So we're trying to make sure that all the vital data or the auscultation, the stethoscope sounds, or any other data that is required for that doctor to diagnose or treat a patient is available to him on the remote side.
Yeah, hi, Dhruv here. So with regard to us, we didn't really have to pivot because we were essentially solving for the problem that we are even today. We were always solving for a shortage of intensivists in India. That was the problem statement with which we had started our company, Cloud Physician. The changes that did happen with the lockdown were actually because this problem was exacerbated significantly. We had to rapidly build up capacity to be able to deploy at many new locations. One of the things that did change from our prior business to the current scenario is that when we started off as a we started off as a small startup company. It was almost impossible for us to navigate the government healthcare space, trying to get into the government space and to be able to bring our solution into government hospitals was just extremely challenging for a small startup like that. Just navigating the bureaucracy and getting through to the right channels and etc. with since the onset of COVID, there has been a lot of uptake on the government side that has kicked in right now. There is a sense of urgency, which is by which they are now, the bureaucracy and the government infrastructure, healthcare infrastructure is looking at digital solutions and looking at new solutions and willing to try them and test them much quicker, much sooner than previously possible. So that has changed in terms of our businesses. Now we're doing business with governments purely because they are able to move much faster, and it's much easier to navigate the entire government machinery now than previously it was.
Yeah, thank you, Dhruv and Harsha. Hope that answered Pratishtha's question. So we have another question by Sabrish. So Sabrish, would you like to unmute yourself and go on with your question? Yes, Sabrish. I guess you're
Yes.
on mute.
Yeah, he's written out his question. I can take that. Just like I mentioned at Cloud Physician, prior to the lockdown, our clients were primarily private hospitals and private healthcare providers. And as such, with the onset of the lockdown, the entire private healthcare industry was hit pretty bad. And so that definitely affected our business as it traditionally was, just because occupancy and cash flow at hospitals had just dipped down, some of them down by 80%, 90% even. And so that certainly made us very well aware of the fact that at that stage, and even in the current stages, it was very important for us, because most of the action, at least in the healthcare space, with at least in the early part of the lockdown, was taking place within the government infrastructure. It was government hospitals that were treating COVID patients, private hospitals were not. And so the importance of us to start engaging with the government, that became imperative. And with the sense of urgency amongst bureaucracy and government healthcare systems as well, we found some uptake. Of course, there were other organizations, many CSR grants, etc., which actually enabled a lot of this uptake to take place, because it's not easy dealing with the government machinery. But so some of these forces came together to help us out at that stage. But amongst private healthcare providers, it was difficult. It was difficult for us to get new business, and even our existing business, our existing clients were having a hard time paying for our services.
Yeah, just to add to what on that previous question, I guess that other piece, right, in terms of an implementation, even that was definitely a challenge, right? I mean, see, we are really speaking about hospitals, and getting into an ICU or getting into the ward is definitely difficult, due to contamination issues and things like that. But COVID makes it extra difficult, right? So if you're looking at a greenfield setup where you're trying to kind of lay out beds and then bring in technology, that probably is more easier. But then getting this deployed within a live COVID hospital, the challenges were immense. I can kind of tell you about, like, say, a personal experience as well, where we've actually deployed it in Victoria. Victoria is like one of the biggest COVID hospitals in Bangalore, and it's under the COVID task force in Karnataka, right? So here it was a live hospital where we had to kind of move in the carts. They did not have network. We needed to kind of get the network working, and also make sure that our engineers, our staff don't get tested positive, right? So it was a huge challenge. We did take help from the doctors there, the people there, their staff, and we did really plan out that network internally, sitting outside. We were at their library for weeks together, even during the lockdown period, even during the time. And there are times where we have had, even me personally, even my employees, right, we had to quarantine ourselves because someone who was there within that particular room tested positive, and then we had to kind of go on a self-isolation for 10 days. We've gotten ourselves tested multiple times. So all that, right, our employees had to go get tested because, there was a little bit of a symptoms. Thankfully, we tested negative. And also, in terms of a sad story to, tell, right, just yesterday, my manufacturing partner's dad passed away through COVID. And again, he was helping us out as well. He was trying to kind of make sure that, the equipments that are required, the part of it which comes from him is getting ready on time and then getting delivered to the location, getting delivered to the site. And his entire family is tested positive. So I feel it is like a really difficult job. And then kudos to everyone, Dhruv's team and every other person who was trying to kind of really go ahead and then risk his life and then solve this problem. Because it is not very different from a war you fight. I mean, it is a war against a pandemic. And then if you're in for it, it is not just about the business. It's also about a cost that you're in for. And that is what will kind of push you forward to go take that risk, really go make sure that, you are creating a difference in that care delivery process. You're trying to help someone. And it's not just about the business here.
So yeah, hope that answered Sabrish's question. We have another question by Mr. Mohammed Tabriz. Would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question? Yeah, Mohammed Tabriz, you're on mute. Would you like to unmute yourself?
Yeah. Actually, I am planning to start a virtual ENT clinic. So, what is the budget I need to start it, and what are the solutions at present available? Examine the ear, nose, or oral cavity. Anything specific you people have addressed on them?
So Mohammed, let me take up that question because we have done a lot of ENT cases, and then this is one of the things that Care Nation has been solving for years together now. So what we have done is integrate with a lot of these ENT devices, be it an otoscope or be it an oral examination camera, or even those rigid endoscopic or laryngoscope devices that we have. We have a full-fledged integrated device, and what it allows you to do is, as a specialist, be, let's say, in a metro, and if you're looking at a patient who is, let's say, in a rural town, right, be able to do that consultation, be able to look into the patient's ears, right, and it's not just about looking into the ears. What you can also do on the platform is that you can record that section of the video that is important for both as a history to the patient case, as well as from a medical legal standpoint. You can record that section of that video that you're seeing. You can do a lot more as well. You can take a snapshot. For example, let's say you are doing an ear canal examination, and you find a small a boil or a pus, right, that's formed, and then you want to kind of explain that to the patient. You can take a snapshot of that image. You can do a collaboration where you're taking that snapshot, annotating on it real time, where the patient can see it, and then you can explain that condition to the patient. In fact, on our platform, we have done a lot of cases around ENT, as well as some diagnosis even around oral cancer that was found, in rural areas. In Karnataka, I remember that we had we have this really interesting problem in the Malnad area, right? There are these insects that gets into the kids' ears, right? And then they come up with fever, and then they complain about ear pain and all that. And then getting an ENT specialist in that particular remote hilly region is not really always easy. So we have our telehealth centers there, where we have these small endoscope devices that go along with the solution, and that is actually used for regularly diagnosing ENT cases and then treating them, giving them medicine. So it is very well possible. We've been doing it for a lot of years now. And also what you need as a digital endoscopic device, there are multiple different types of devices on that. So we can actually take it offline and then talk about the devices as well. Depending on what is the kind of device, again, the cost actually varies. So if you look at a cost, it can be a very simple device that costs you less than 20 grand. and it can be a real expensive device which costs upwards of 2 lakh as well. So it depends on what is the kind of endoscope you go for, and it's about buying a Maruti 800 or a Ferrari. So it's there. There are a lot of options that are available, and the digital endoscopes can actually kind of the feed can be taken, and then we can do a high quality streaming to the other side, recording of that stream, and also editing of the stream. I hope that answers your question, Mohammed.
So yeah, thank you, Harsha. So we have another question by Mr. Joe. Joe, would you like to unmute yourself and go on with your question? So, yeah.
Hi, I'm Jyoti. So, are there any specific challenges you faced, especially in being able to detect certain symptoms where you need, like a doctor need to be present, like for instance, hearing murmurs in certain heart diseases, or assessing the joint movement and fractures, or like there's a problem where you have to press until you feel the pain. So, in such sort of situations, I mean, are there any challenges you have faced in diagnosing the disease or its prognosis? Like, it would be great to hear a few of solutions that you came up with for such sort of challenges or without direct contact. Yeah.
So Joe, this is really interesting, right? And then this is again a question that gets posed from the patient side as well a lot of times. And as I said, when we started off, our goal was to look at all the doctor and patient interactions or the doctor and patient transactions that happen in an in-person, in-room consultation, right? And then replicate these interactions over a virtual consultation, on a remote channel. So that's what we started off and building, and then to a large extent we've been able to do that. While you can't really touch the patient, right? There's a lot more you can also do. I mean, I'm sure Dhruv can again take it as a doctor and then also explain the answers to this. But then see, for a simple thing, right? You're speaking about the auscultation. So can a doctor hear the heart sounds and the lung sounds? He can hear it over a remote consultation as well. We do use digital stethoscopes for our teleconsultation solution. And these digital stethoscopes, in fact, give you a better audio quality than compared to the normal stethoscopes as well. There are stethoscopes that have a wonderful DSP within them that allows you to filter out, let's say the heart sounds and lung sounds, or mix them, or even if you want to kind of do noise cancellation, that is possible. So all of these, electronics within those stethoscope actually makes it a lot better than the regular run-of-the-mill stethoscope that you get, right? And then that sounds is actually sent to the doctor on the other side. In fact, we do a little bit more than just that. I mean, when we started off, our idea was to replicate that interaction that was done in person, right? So we went forward and then said, now I'm doing this in virtual session. How can I enhance that interaction, right? So what we do is the audio that you get as an auscultation audio on a remote, as a remote doctor, we don't just play that audio on the headphones. What we do is we take that audio and then plot a spectrogram of that audio in real time. So the doctor is also able to visualize or see that visual representation of that audio. We even have our AI and ML pipelines where you can actually give in like a 20-second audio clip and then try and figure out if there is anomaly in that heart sound. So all those things are possible as technology is advancing, and then a lot of these devices or gadgets are making things possible. And also on the other side, right, we also integrate with ultrasound devices, ultrasound probes, and that again is an alternative to touch many a time. So where you really have the doctor touching your stomach and then trying to feel things, and then you might even have these ultrasound devices that are used instead of the actual touch, right? So there are alternatives. There are things that you can do to actually make up for that touch. And also, I'll probably leave my remarks with this last point, right, where this whole idea of this doctor touching and then the patient actually getting cured because of the doctor's touch. I feel it is also looked at not completely about the touch, right? It's also about that non-verbal communication that happens. So traditionally, what had happened is with telemedicine, when you're trying to do it with the phone or with the smaller screen, that non-verbal communication from the doctor to the patient was generally getting lost. So in all of our solutions, when we have tried to do, right, apart from the mobile phone things, we have tried to make sure that the doctor and patient eye contact is not lost. We have tried to make sure that the doctor's representation on the other side is almost, in life size. So what happens is you have, as a patient, an experience that is as close to possible, close as possible to sitting across the table to the doctor and interacting. So the doctor is now able to kind of interact with you, looking at you, and that presence, that interaction, kind of, has another effect on the patient. And this is something that we have seen on ground, where the patient actually feels that he has met a doctor versus him feeling that, I've spoken to a laptop or a computer screen. I let Drew add as well, because this is something very relevant for telehealth, and yeah.
So I think generally speaking, telehealth is a really large space, and is a very heterogeneous space as well, with many different use cases. You have use cases where in telehealth you are augmenting another doctor, a remote specialist may be augmenting a doctor at the bedside. You may have an interaction where you have a doctor augmenting a nurse. You may have a doctor directly to a patient. But generally, telehealth as it stands today is primarily, or rather, still remains an augmentation tool, largely speaking. It's augmenting the ability of doctors, maybe virtually, maybe maybe even physically, to be able to provide better quality care. That's how I sort of view the entire sort of landscape of telehealth as it stands right now. There still remain use cases that require a doctor to be at the bedside. So I think in one of the questions they had mentioned, what about somebody who has a fracture or has a dislocated shoulder or something of that sort? You could probably get a CT scan, which could be interpreted by a radiologist or an orthopedician remotely, and be given the diagnosis. You may still, and you probably still will, require a doctor's intervention, maybe surgery, maybe not surgery, whatever it may be. So as it stands right now today, I think that it still, for the most part, is an augmentation tool that I think patients can use, doctors can use, nurses can use, other healthcare providers can use, ancillary providers can use. And there are, since it is such a heterogeneous space, there are many different sort of use cases. With regard to the use case of being able to listen to a patient's heart sounds, for example, if you have an ultrasound machine, the ultrasound machine with a doctor who can interpret that ultrasound, even if he's remote, is far going to be much more superior to a stethoscope, right? So irrespective of who the doctor at the bedside is. So that's how I would sort of view this. I would view generally the entire telehealth space as one that sort of augments our current capabilities, because we simply don't have enough doctors at all the different places that we want to have them. And if we did, it would not, well, firstly, it would not be possible, and secondly, it would simply not be at a population level a cost-effective solution.
So yeah, thank you, Dhruv and Harsha. So one question. So as a startup, what are the challenges you are currently facing? Might be on financials or marketing. So what is your challenge right now?
Sure, I can go first. Currently, we're actually growing pretty rapidly, for the reason that I spoke about earlier. We were already solving for the problem of shortage of intensivists or ICU specialist doctors in the country. What has happened in the last 3 months has basically been a lot of awareness of this existing problem, a lot of acceptance, both on the the caregiver or the doctors and hospitals side of things, as well as at the patient side of things, because now people are viewing technology within the healthcare delivery space as a much I think it was always a viable solution, but just in terms of the acceptance, at least in the previous few years, you had early adopters who were taking to such solutions, but largely speaking, technology has not penetrated the healthcare delivery space, and that's a little bit of a travesty. So we're seeing that taking place, and so some tailwinds from COVID have certainly helped us. We're having to expand our capacity and maintain the quality of our product and our solution at the same time. We're having to bring on board a lot of people. Some of the challenges are we are having some logistical challenges purely because travel is not easy these days. So even installations need to be done remotely, training needs to be done remotely, business development needs to be done remotely. Talking to doctors and hospitals where earlier you could go and meet somebody and maybe build a relationship with them, all needs to be done online right now. So that transition is taking place, and it does throw up a few challenges. But generally speaking, people are being more accepting of the fact of the reality that this is the world that we live in, and technology is here to stay, even in healthcare. So that's certainly something. From a financial standpoint, again, I would say that we have had some tailwinds of the entire COVID scenario that has worked in our favor, and we have seen adoption, new clients, and a pretty strong pipeline. So from that standpoint, it has not been that challenging. Bringing on board good talent, that is always challenging, and that's something that we're always working on. But again, I would say that it has, definitely the current scenario has certainly helped, because you have a lot of smart engineers and a lot of smart folks from other fields, and even really smart doctors who are now looking at technology solutions as a viable career path, much more so than previously. And so you're getting access to some pretty good talent as well. But acquiring good talent is I think for all startups is always challenging.
Yeah, thank you, Dhruv. So Harsha, would you like to take up that question?
Yeah, just to, I mean, I probably will, just reiterate what Dhruv said mostly, right? Because we've been through the similar, situation or similar flow where definitely there is, there is people listening to us more because of COVID situation, or generally it would be much more difficult to kind of talk to the CIOs or the clinical teams or the decision-making teams at the hospitals, because they have never really kind of prioritized technology and healthcare delivery to be one of their prime focus. So they always look at, I mean, if they're making a technology investment, they'll say that we have a huge technology spending. It'll be probably on a CT or an MRI machine, and then not really on the healthcare delivery process or the IT as such. And that I feel has changed, and that's definitely in a way kind of worked as an advantage for us. But at the same time, as Dhruv pointed, the problems with logistics, the problems with travel, the problems with the whole COVID scenario, right? It's multifolds, and that again has definitely led to a lot more challenges, right? Again, one more additional thing that we have as a problem, which generally a lot of startups who go on for a funding early wouldn't have, is that we chose to be bootstrapped by choice. So we had this additional problem of cash flow issues and stuff, because we were solely dependent on revenues for survival. This is in fact the first money that we have taken as a grant, that too. And then the reason being, we always wanted to kind of stay true to our cause and then stay true to what our vision was. And it's generally easier to get swayed away when there is people offering you money for let's say pivoting into a services business, being the next M-Fine, or being part of a larger hospital chain and then working with their technology wing. It's more easier, but then we wanted to go the higher route, and then we did face a lot of challenges because of that. Luckily, one important thing that we could do early on is that we also thought about building this not just for India, but then building it with global standards and building it for the world. So while we had this problem of a technology adoption worldwide, right, we did still have a larger market. For example, we do run, the national telemedicine network for Greece. So we have about 43 different islands that we are connecting in Greece, and then we are connecting another 33 more to the mainland hospitals. And those are places where there was this real challenge, even without COVID, where people had to get on a boat and then travel distances for specialist consultation. And that's something that we have helped solve. We have been in various countries like Spain and Latin America and stuff. Just that, while building, we took care of being compliant to standards, being adherent to all those things, as well as adapting, the bleeding edge of technology, building in products that are far superior in terms of technology adoption from that of what was available even in the US. And at the same time, be compliant with standards around integrations or healthcare data exchange, and then be compliant in terms of patient data safety. So that is something that I guess had helped us. But at the same time, this code scenario is definitely come in with a lot of new opportunities. And definitely, as Drew pointed, getting good talent is always a challenge. And if you know someone, feel free to refer to us, and then we'll probably be interested in hiring as well. So yeah, that's what I'd say.
So yeah, then now we have a question from Mr. Devendra Godki.
Yes.
So would you like to unmute yourself and ask a question? Yeah.
Yeah. Hello. Hi, Harsha and Dhruv. I am Devendra. And so my question, yeah. So my question is about, so what I come to know is this telehealth and cloud physician would actually provide an instantaneous diagnosis and will guide the prognosis of COVID-19. So I would like to know that how do you see the data gathered? Because the data so gathered from various monitoring devices could give you a novel interpretation in a later stage as more data is being collected with time. Thank you.
Absolutely right, Devendra, and great question. So yes, our goal at Cloud Physician was to get as much of a 360-degree view of the patient as possible. So data comes in from different sources. Data comes from patient monitors. Data comes from the patient's ventilators. Data comes from patient lab reports, existing medication reports. Data comes from patient's prior history, any notes that the previous doctors may have written, and also comes in the form of a high definition video feed of these patients. So it is having access to all of this data in real time that really enables our doctors at the command center to be able to act as and when required. Now, all of this is obviously being crunched through the analytics engine of our platform Radar, and which gives us more actionable data, and also improves the efficiency of our doctors to be able to take care of more patients in different locations. So that's it comes from all of these sources, and all of this data is actually required, like you said, rightly pointed out, that all of this data influences the decision making that a doctor would do, and so we require all of this. And again, like I said, as we get more and more of this data, it helps us improve not just our efficiency and our quality over a period of time, but helps us build in more and more intelligence into the system that would again make the data more actionable, improve our response times to emergencies, and not just the response times to emergencies, but very often, like you pointed out, help us to improve our prognostications and pick up issues that may even before they actually occur. So all of this is an ongoing process and something that we're working on at Cloud Physician. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you, Dhruv. Harsha, would
Yeah, thank you.
you like to add on to Dhruv's
Yeah, I mean,
answer?
you answered that very well,
Yeah.
and it's a continuous process of improvement, and the data that is coming in, it is generally a dashboard that works for most applications. Cloud Physician has got their platform, which kind of brings in data from different systems and then aggregates them, gives a combined view of the data in a patient's context. So CareNation does the same as well, where we get in data from these medical devices, these video scopes, the video conferencing video itself, and there is also this DICOM and other medical modalities from which the device data is coming in, and also the other let's say clinical notes and then prescriptions and everything else that is kind of coming in, and then it's been represented as a dashboard. What we try to do is basically sync the patient's context on both sides, so that when you have let's say the cart in front of a patient's bed, all of the data related to that patient is available to the doctor. So we sync that context. And again, in terms of having AI and analytics or ML to kind of really look at if there can be something that is done as a predictive insight or an analytics, that we already do, where we we don't really do diagnosis, right? And in terms of AI, the goal for us is to again see how we can augment the doctor's capacity to kind of bridge that gap. We do kind of an intelligent triaging, or trying to help identify who is the patient in need of a care more urgently than the other one. So that's about what we do in terms of the AI ML layers, where we try to kind of say that there is something abnormal, but then we are not really diagnosing. So we're saying that look at this patient first and look at this patient second. So that's all that we do. So I hope that answers your question, Devendra.
Yeah. Thank you, Harsha. So there is one other question by Pratishta Jain. Pratishta, would you like to unmute yourself and ask the question, please?
Just a follow-up question to what Dhruv was talking, that it's you guys have been hiring good talent, and you guys are always looking for good talent. So I think it'll be really interesting to find out how you guys identify talent and how you guys onboarding during these times, considering you guys have to expand given the fund. It'll also be helpful for us startups to understand on how to onboard talent.
I'll probably take a stab at it, and then I'll let Dhruv go on this as well. So this is the $1 billion question. How do you kind of find the right talent? There is no good answer to this. Even from I mean, not just me telling you, but then even I'm doing my master's, and then even the college tells me this. Work with a person for some time, and then you get to know more. It's like a dating activity, and then you've known the person better to kind of get them in and then work with them. So I guess that's always the best way to do it, where let's say you are going with a person who is interning for you, and then is really motivated, really kind of willing to go that extra mile and then work with you. That is definitely more important. Skills are something that you can definitely gain over time. Definitely you need skilled people. I mean, I'm not denying that skills are not necessary. I mean, definitely skills are important. But then that passion, that motivation to kind of really go ahead and then do things is also very important along with that skill. So if a person is capable, he is good with aptitude, and then really kind of has the potential to deliver. And if he is motivated and driven enough, he can skill up and then still deliver. So it's always good to work with people over a period of time, and then look at getting them into a bigger role is what I feel works best. And in terms of that expansion and hiring, yeah, definitely we need to kind of really hire right now and then expand. But at the same time, what I feel is also essential is really hiring the right people. So we'll not really rush on that, is definitely what I'd like to say. But at the same time, the decision making will be a lot faster, I guess, because given the short timeline.
Are there any specific platforms that you usually explore for such talent acquisition?
See, one of the platforms that I've loved most is these hackathons or tech competitions that happen, right? And in terms of getting good talent that is really kind of motivated to solve problems on technology, and then someone who's really passionate about technology and then pushing the limits of it. those are the guys who are sitting there and then trying to build out cool solutions, but then they don't really know how to take it to, like, say, the people, or really it is not really built for a purpose, right, or a cause. So if you can actually show them a cause in what you're doing, and then they kind of come on board and then do things, they are the ones that work best, is what I feel.
Yeah, I would probably echo some of the things that Harsha said. I guess there's no uh, there's no good answer to how do you hire good talent, right? I will say one thing though. It is really important, especially at when you are at a startup stage, to hire quote unquote good talent, because it can make a big difference. Getting the wrong person on can also hurt you significantly early on. So at least when you are at a smaller stage, it's even more important that you pick and choose right. Just again, some of the things that we look at. Of course, you look at just a little bit about our organization. We are both we hire both on the clinical front. So we're hiring doctors and nurses, as well as on the technology front, where we're hiring developers and data scientists. And while there are nuances to these different sort of roles and a few different things that you'd look at, one of the things that you want to really establish early on is alignment of the vision of your organization. Alignment of the vision, and whether that the person would fit into your culture. Some of the things that Harsha mentioned, being able to sort of go above and beyond, sometimes counts way more than the degrees you may have, or the prior experience you may have. While still important, especially when you're in a smaller organization, very often you'll be wearing multiple hats, and it will not be as structured an environment as you may have experienced if you were at a larger organization. So that alignment of vision, and the ability to for that common vision that you share in the entire organization, for everyone to sort of work towards that and go above and beyond. If you're able to identify that characteristic in your team members, that's golden. Of course, you would go to you would look at their degrees and their experience and their capabilities. There's no doubt about that. But that's one X factor that I would say that it's great to look at, and it's not easy to come by. So you need to pick and choose right. In terms of how you go about hiring, yeah, sure. As our journey, like early on, we started with some regular headhunters. Then we went to some online headhunting sites, and we brought on some folks from there. We got some good people there. The one other thing that that we have realized as we have sort of grown as an organization, we have now over 50 people, is that um, your own in-house talent will help you get more talent. And that's something that you should also look at. I mean, if your existing team is really happy with what they're doing and the type of organization that they're working on, they themselves will also help you get more people. They're all connected. They've all come from colleges or worked in places, or prior experiences, etc. And we found that also helps. We've had quite a few of our team members who have come back to us and said that, hey, you know what, I know this guy, and he's a real superstar, and he's not terribly thrilled at his previous organization, and I think he would be great. Why don't you talk to him? We've had few of those conversations, and that's really helped us. So that's also helped. It's really important to keep that eye on the ball, the vision, and maintain that culture. It really helps grow your team the way that you want to.
Yeah, that was a cool question and two cool answers we got. So before wrapping up the session, we've got one last question from Mr. Srinivasan. Mr. Srinivasan, would you like to unmute yourself and go with your question?
Yeah, sure. Hey, Dhruv, and Harsha. Like I'm also a startup company. Like my company is Concept Care, and we initially, like 3 years before, we also started a telemedicine thing, and then we what we did is, like, we have developed a web platform where doctors and the patients can connect it, where all the soap notes can be gathered, and that's what. And after that, I wanted to implement and gather the vital informations, and can be used it for the remote patient monitoring. And when I was going for a device that most of the devices is not, I mean, FDA approved, right? And you guys have been getting the data from the patient, right? Is how do you make sure that, I mean, is that you have developed your own in-house team for that vital capturing?
That's a good question, Srinivasan, and then nice to know about your startup as well. This is a hard problem. So what we did was when we initially started off as well, we decided that we are not going to be a medical device manufacturer, and then we are going to stick to a technology space which kind of is relevant in healthcare delivery, but not medical devices as such. Right? Again, what we did was also decide that we will work with medical device manufacturers that are FDA and or CE compliant in terms of the devices, and we were able to kind of establish that partnerships with those medical device manufacturers, and that has actually helped us in terms of getting access to the protocol details, integrating those protocols into our gateways, and then also on the other side, what we did was we standardized the approach in terms of how we handle telemetry. So while the telemetry and the rest of the solution remains the same for onboarding a new device for us, the change that happens is on the protocol adapter layer, where if there is a new device that is getting onboarded, there would be a new protocol adapter that is getting written. And again, protocol, when I say it's on different levels, right? So we actually support different interfaces where protocols around Bluetooth or Wi-Fi or RS-232 serial. So all these are like are really solved as part of the stack. But in terms of getting in that raw data and then converting them, that adapters is something that is incrementally written when you're onboarding a new device. So that kind of helps us to go to different markets as well. For example, let's say when we are in Spain, if there is a device manufacturer that is local to Spain and that works out more cost effective than importing a device from the US or any other part of the world, then what happens is it makes sense to partner with that particular device manufacturer and it's adherent to local laws. And at the same time, we are able to onboard him without much of a friction. It's more easier to write simple adapters to bring in onto our platform and then establish this connection. And again, I guess one more thing that I'd like to add is, also we looked at some, interesting ways to do it. I'm sure that Dhruv also does it with his platform. So there are some devices that don't have connectivity at all, like especially when we are looking at this chronic healthcare space. There are a lot of these glucometer devices, or let's say BP or SpO2 devices, right, which don't really have an integration at all, right? No wired or Bluetooth way to kind of get the data out. So what we do is also have a visual acquisition piece where you can take your phone and then just point at that SpO2 device, and then it automatically populates the value for it through a OCR kind of a technology, right? So that again is one of the other things that we do where, this is like the last effort where you don't have any other option on the device to take the data out. You kind of, use that visual acquisition.
So yeah, hope that answered your question. So due to the interest of time, let's take up one last question by Redcure AI. So kindly unmute yourself and ask your question, sir, please.
Yeah, got it. Now, so I have two questions. Basically, now engaging the medical community people into the medical technology farm, how is the general response? That is the one question. Another thing is, when we talk about medical technology using devices and software especially in the sense the artificial intelligence and analytical software. Now, for the devices are concerned, these FDA kind of things are, there is a certain approval mechanism is there, so that is a benchmark for using that particular device. But whereas the analytics capacity is concerned, if I apply a particular AI ML algorithm, is there any prior approval is needed? Because if I use some analysis or some algorithm to analyze a particular disease or particular data, what is the approval mechanism needed, or is it already approved, or because these are all already statistically proven, but how I can confirm that with the end users or the medical community? This is the second question.
Yeah. So, Dhruv, you want to take it up, or you want me to take it up?
Go ahead, Harsha.
Yeah. So definitely, right, there are two pieces to it. One is there are algorithms or even systems that are FDA approved as well. I mean to say that there is sufficient validation on their credibility or specificity. And also, it is not that you would actually take in a random model on the internet and then go out and put it in the field. Even if it is an algorithm that works well, it might not work for a particular demographic that you're looking at. So ideally, you would work, with the organization. I mean, in terms of where the whole solution is at in terms of AI, right? So you'll ideally work with the organization, typically a large organization that has got access to a lot of data from their patients, and look at you introducing that platform over the existing data, looking at how accurate it is and how specific it is, and then really kind of bring it to the diagnosis or the newer data, right? And again, as I said earlier, for us, right? I mean, I'm not speaking in general, but then at least for us, we have limited it to a point where we want to do sort of a screening and not really a diagnosis. So there's a lot of difference in that space. So, for example, if I have a model for diabetic retinopathy screening, for example, right? I might put this in a camp where there is a machine going, in a van, for example, and there is about 100 or 200 patients that are coming in daily, and then giving their fundus image, right? So that fundus image, if you want ophthalmologists to take a look into it, would take weeks together because there's a lot of images that are getting generated, right? Instead of that, if you can actually take AI, right, run your algorithm on top of it, screen the patients, and say that these let's say 50 patients out of the 1,000 patients that you have screened are the ones that are most probably having a retinopathy, right? Or are probably in the early stages or late stages. Then you can classify them as well. So that is what you would apply AI for, and not really as a replacement for an ophthalmologist.
Yeah, I got these points now. Yeah, that I totally agree with you. But the specific question is, when you suggested you engage some big firms for this kind of algorithms or analysis, I'm just putting the question in another way. If at all, if we want to develop some kind of algorithm, and we will take care of the certain hyperparameters so that it will prove the prediction is pretty much scientific and correct. And for those things, is there any approval needed or not? That is the actual question.
No, that's what you're doing a study. You will have an approval for that study with the relevant let's say it would be a healthcare research institute that you would partner with for this particular kind of an activity, right? For example, let's say you're partnering with Arvind Eye Care or someone else who is a large chain of eye hospitals, and what you would do is really work with them on their data, and also probably at the end of the day, right, publish a paper on what is your accuracy, what is it that you learned, and how well your model performs, right? And that is what you would use as a basis. And again, you can go for approval on top of it for an FDA approval as well if you want to take it to the US. Okay, there are devices that go or systems that have AI algorithms in them today that are FDA approved for diagnosis as well. So you can actually do that as well. So it is looked at just like any other medical device. Okay, and in terms of what you would do for a medical device, in terms of the values that it turns out, right, based on a blood parameter or something like that. This is the same thing that you're doing. You're taking in a parameter which might be an image, which might be a heart sound, which might be a set of data, right? And then you are really kind of looking at how accurate is your model for that particular data, right? How accurately are you diagnosing, right? So that is something that would be treated as a medical device as well, and it's already being done. So you can actually look up for devices that are using AI as well.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Thank you. So We are nearing end of the session. Thank you so much, Dhruv and Harsha, for joining us this Friday evening and sharing your insights and experience. It's really good to see two entrepreneurs come together in a good spirit. So would you like to give some end remarks?
Yeah, hi. Thank you for this opportunity. This is great to be amongst you. Um, I think generally the in terms of med tech and health tech, the the winds are in our favor these days, and will continue to be a lot of opportunity in this space. I would say as a physician myself and as a doctor myself, unfortunately, at least up until now, the physician community at large has not been very forthcoming in integrating technology into its existing workflows, and from that standpoint, I think technologists, many of you here, are much better than us physicians in looking at the big picture view and problem solving and looking at things from a future proof standpoint. So again, thank you all for inviting me here, and happy to interact with you in the future as well. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks everyone for again having us here. I would just add to what Drew said. Wonderful people. I feel the questions are really interesting, and the medical community as a whole, right? It was not easy, I'd say, in terms of convincing people to kind of move into technology, or for the simplest of things, even asking a doctor to say that use a digital stethoscope instead of a normal stethoscope, and then the data that you collect on digital stethoscope can actually help improve care, right? I mean, if you are collecting a stethoscope sound for every patient, and then you have the diagnosis that is done for each patient at the end of the day, that is good data that you're collecting. And convincing that was a big challenge. But I feel that is something that has definitely changed given the COVID scenario. And then even people who did not want that laptop or a desktop in front of on their desk, right? Doctors, they now are open to kind of doing teleconsultations and telehealth, because that kind of gives them an advantage in reducing the risk of exposure. I've had again, the question that was asked on ENT. I just had yesterday someone call up and then ask me about whether. I mean, he's an ENT specialist. He's like, I don't want to go to my clinic. Can I consult from home? And then I want to make sure that my OPD patients are something that I consult from home. So I guess that is something that people as a healthcare community is opening up, the doctors. And again, these are troubled times, but then I guess these are also times that actually make us think outside the box and then come up with solutions that can really impact the next years, even post-COVID, right? The post-COVID era is going to be much stronger for healthcare and healthcare technologies that kind of have enabled during these times. And definitely, if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to talk to you guys. Do reach out to us if you or anyone whom you know is very passionate about working on healthcare technologies and solving real problems on ground. Feel free to reach out to us and then talk to us on that as well.
So yeah, thank you, Harsha and Dhruv. It was a great session. Thank you all for your participation too, and let's have a happy weekend all. Bye.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Stay safe.
Bye.
And have a great weekend. Bye.
Yeah, bye.